Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan.
I think it somehow seems that Vitral is not getting sufficient business share from D2C. If there is one punching bag that you seem to have picked up on, is this term called D2C. Not actually the D2C business, but this term, this notion of D2C. So I somehow like, and I'm sure our audience have deciphered by now, that you don't like this term at all, right? And then, when we talk about D2C, you say that D2C is not it can't be a strategy. It is just
Right.
it
Right.
can't be your company, etc. Right? Now, for this episode, you've not only picked up D2C, but you're also accusing them of playing games. What's happening?
So I'm not accusing them. In fact, I'm more encouraging them to play more games. But
Okay, interesting.
D2C is a channel, it's not a brand, all that I've said before. But see, they try to go direct to consumer, but most of them go via e-com platforms. So they're not necessarily D2C there. I'm just calling them out. You could even call them the new age brands of today. And by going after the channels that they do, which is their website, e-com and quick commerce, they do get traction. They do meet customers. They do reach their products to customers. But they do not get scale. They end up being a bit of a niche brand. And if that's all you want to be, fair enough.
Okay.
You're just not going to scale out of the park for now without going offline, especially in India.
Okay. So the core point that you're starting with is that online availability and distribution has a certain amount of limitation to it.
Ceiling, yeah.
Beyond which you need to get to offline. So is there a cutoff point? Is there some point in a life of a business that they should start building offline distribution? I remember we'd spoken about the slow burn or the slow chew, long chew.
Yeah.
But
pretty much.
When does a business know that they have to start building it?
So if you look at the long chew period, it starts roughly when you hit the 50 crore mark. So that kind of still holds true for this. What I say,
okay,
it is possible to build a brand and even be a little profitable up to about, say, a 50 crore business.
Okay.
One after that, you get noticed by others and they start attacking you and you start having to spend. Most of your profitability takes a beating, if not your revenue. Scaling beyond that, just on the e-com platforms is not going to be easy. Therefore, you also have to look at offline. And if you take it if you're a good, thriving business, you should get there in about 3 years. It is possible to build a 50 crore brand just on e-com platforms. Now, how you want to go beyond that, completely up to you. But offline is the only way you can scale if you want to.
Okay. And let's talk about that phase. So, I'm sure a lot of businesses tend to get stuck when they reach that 3-year mark or the 50 crore mark. And so therefore, why do you think they get stuck, and what can they do?
See, online traction for a brand is a lot easier than getting offline traction. To say there are lower entry barriers, your fixed costs are lower. It's a lot about variable costs, and you are hands-on handling the channel as an entrepreneur or a brand owner. You are handling the channel directly. You know what's happening, how many people are visiting, who's buying, who's not buying. You have a lot of information. And when you go offline, it requires a completely different set of muscles to build offline distribution.
Okay, understood. And when you say muscle, you mean more people on the ground? What kind of muscle are we talking about?
So you do need people on the ground also, but I would classify them into 5 categories.
Okay.
And that's GTM.
Okay.
Assortment.
Yeah.
Your messaging, e-leverage.
Okay.
And systems.
Oh, that's the games.
Pretty much.
Okay, so they're not playing games, but you're giving them games.
Right. It's more, so what we can do is we can explain these factors of how they impact business. But each business is very unique. Sometimes a brand, 2 brands in the same category would need to approach business in very different ways.
Okay.
So what we can do today is for each of these factors, give them a bit of an introduction, but leave them with questions to say what questions they need to find answers to if they're going to build offline distribution for their respective brands.
Okay, good, excellent. So I think we can kick that off by saying let's play. So what's the first G? So G was GTM, go to market.
Right.
Okay,
So
tell us more about it.
That's the crux of offline, right? Distribution. And offline distribution just seems ominous to people. They're scared.
Yeah.
Because you, so far, like I said, you've been hands-on on the channel. But suddenly you're going to be available in markets where it's out of sight. You don't really know what's happening there. And you still have to keep spending for it. You got to build your infrastructure there. So it kind of feels very, very scary for entrepreneurs. It almost feels like you're losing control of your business.
Yeah.
So the first point is to start small. When something seems so big, always start small. And go very small. Start in a smaller geography. You don't need the ideal geography for this. Choose your best accessible geography and test. Build from there.
I remember we spoke about this on the episode for building offline distribution.
Exactly.
And you
that
spoke
is
about
just on GTM.
Correct. So you said start with one distributor, expand their area, etc. Start with shops nearby.
One retailer, give it for free.
One retailer, give it for free. Stand there, study the shopper behavior, etc. Then appoint a distributor, then grow, etc., etc. Then move to a city, then to a state, etc.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I remember you spoke about it. Okay, excellent, fair. Okay, what else?
So there are critical questions you need to ask. So the primary critical question being where to play. Like I said, you don't have to be at the ideal place. You just have to start with the most accessible place. Yeah. The next point also we've covered in the marketing side of sales, your retail classification.
Yeah.
You say, I want to be available in all the stores. No, you don't need to be available in all the stores. At least not when you start. Mostly, even after you've started, you've established, you don't need to be available in all the stores. You need to know what kind of retail environments are needed for your brand or your product to be sold. So what do you know about that? Do your products need to be sold in every store? Mostly not. So pick them. Pick the right stores you want to be available in.
Sure. Okay.
The next question is about retailer and distributor margin. This is where a lot of people get stuck because they have been abused significantly in the organized trade, e-com and modern trade, where they've had to cull out a lot of margin. Now, they do not have almost a sense of morality to negotiate with the distributor. The distributor also will start big, but there are industry margins and there are startup margins.
What is startup margin?
Distributors know to demand more margin of a startup.
Okay.
Because the volume is going to be smaller.
Yeah.
So you need to find a balance between this. Ideally, you should not give anything more than industry margin or keep it industry margins as close to it as possible.
Okay.
But you have to promise profitability. You could support them with incentives, support them on cost, instead of giving them direct margins. Because margins you can't change very easily. The variables you can always change as you grow.
Sure. I remember again we spoke about this while building offline distribution. And we said that since your turnover is low and your velocity might not be so high, so you might need to compensate with a little bit of extra margin.
Right.
But that's the right way of investing. Okay. And so therefore, is there an ideal margin that everybody should?
See, there is no ideal margin as such, right? It varies from category to category. But what entrepreneurs and brand owners should focus on is making sure the distributor is profitable.
Okay.
And a thumb rule profitability is 24% on the investment he's made. So after all expenses, 2% of his monthly revenue, of the monthly income, 2% of the revenue, should be his profit. Now, how you do that is completely up to you, but do that with variable costs.
Understood.
What is the margin? How much can you manage is the question I will leave you with.
Okay. Fair. So that's GTM.
Right.
Let's come to the next one, assortment.
Yes. It's about putting together the right product SKU mix for your business. Now, a lot of entrepreneurs, even before they hit the 50 crore mark, expand into a lot of categories. They will launch a lot of products because they believe they need a basket size. Now, whether you get more business from fewer SKUs, or you get lesser business but have a lot of SKUs to make up for the lesser business, it's up to you. But when you're building offline distribution, if your products, not all your products are going into the stores that you're distributing into. For example, product 1 needs to be distributed into supermarkets. Product 3 needs to be distributed into pawn shops. That actually spreads your resource too thin. You need to have products that go into the same kind of stores. You need to kind of rationalize that.
Okay. And is that important because you're trying to recover the cost that you're spending in reaching that store?
Yes, the cost of distribution is there, but the cost of distribution is a completely another conversation we can go on to. But here I'm saying, if you're spending money and effort going into a store, might as well make sure all your products are at that store.
Okay, understood. So you leverage the sort of stores that you're already available in before trying to expand to newer stores with newer assortment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then you come into your SKU prioritization. So when selling online, we do bundle packs. We try and push the larger SKU. So if you look at quick commerce today, most brands have removed the smaller SKUs. They kind of keep the larger SKUs to justify the basket size, justify the logistic cost that they're paying. But when you go offline, you need to drive trial with customers. Now, are these large packs the best way to drive trials for you? If not, what is the right size pack for you? What price point? Do you want to focus on price point? If you want to focus on grammage, it really depends on the category. You need to prioritize, understand what SKUs are going to go into what kind of stores. That is your SKU prioritization. And last but not the least, my question is, are your SKUs profitable at a unit level?
Oh, okay. We're back to unit P&L then.
Yes, we even did a whole episode on unit P&L, right?
Yes, we did.
I see a lot of entrepreneurs who launch products and then say, we will become profitable over time. Yeah. If you're going to become profitable over time, at least to know when you're going to become profitable. That lets you know how much you're going to invest in these channels, behind these SKUs, these products.
Sure.
Without that, you are not running a tech business in the consumer way, in FMCG at least. So plan accordingly.
You're right. Actually, all of this, if you are profitable at a unit level, that brings in money. Okay. So this makes sense. Like you say, no money, no honey.
Exactly.
Okay. Fair. So GTM, assortment.
Yeah.
Next one was messaging.
Messaging, M.
Okay.
So the brands at a 50 crore point would already have proof of concept, as in their messaging and their product has been accepted by the customer. Right. Now the challenge is in being consistent. So, and contrary to popular belief, customers don't exist in bubbles. There are no online customers and offline customers. There are customers for everywhere.
Omnichannel.
I hate that word. It is always omnichannel. Suddenly it's come up saying, I'm omnichannel experts. But these customers will see your brand online, might even visit your website or your Amazon store online, but the eventual purchase might be offline.
Yeah.
So you can't have different brand experiences. You have to deliver the same brand experience, whether it is your website, whether it is a newspaper insertion, whether it is Amazon page or at the point of sale at the retailer offline. Now, are you able to deliver the same seamless experience of your brand that you did online in store? Now, the tools you use to deliver the experience will be very different.
Yes.
But the experience has to still be the same.
Yes.
You will have your visual merchandising. You'll have your promoter who's standing there. Do they reflect the brand's promise and values as they do or like you do online? Next question is your message consistent? You would have told them a certain message, what your brand stands for. Now, your format of message could vary, but your message has to stay consistent. What you said on your homepage banner will have to be on your POS, could be on your store boards, could be on your shelf stickers. But is the message consistent? If there are different messages going out, customers do not know what to make of your brand, and you will end up not building a brand at all.
Fair. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. No, I think that makes sense. However, it is easier said than done, Sharan.
Absolutely.
You struggle to craft the message. I'm reminded of this cartoon by Thomas Fishburne, who goes by the name of Marketoonist.
Yeah.
So there's this, it shows a table, there are two people sitting across. You could, by the flow of dialogues, you could understand one of them is a marketer, the other is an agency, and it's a brief being given about message. So the marketer, in their typical style, says, "We don't want an ad. We want storytelling," which is now the buzzword. Yeah, storytelling which has deep human narratives, emotional connection, values driven authenticity, all big words, right? So the agency has one simple question: what story would you like to tell? Right? And the story that the brand offers to them is that we are 50% off for a limited period of time. Unfortunately, that's the only proof of market that they've seen thus far.
Well, that is a deep human narrative at the end of the day.
Correct.
50% off for a limited period.
Limited period of time. Correct. Correct.
Right.
So, okay, fair. So, messaging is a point well made. Okay, then next one is interesting. I couldn't understand. What is e-leverage?
So, this is critical because
Okay.
a lot of the brands, when they have to build offline distribution, they believe they're starting almost new business from scratch. They forget to carry the learnings of what they've had already. Because when you meet people, when you meet the distributor, when you meet the retailer, a lot of them will behave as if they've never seen your brand before. That doesn't mean you are new to the market. You are a concept proven brand. You got a 50 crore roughly turnover and you've been selling online. There is enough data and information to tell you that you're not a newbie. You're here to scale, not to test market.
Yeah.
So you need to carry your insights from there. This is how you will be different from anybody starting afresh in the market. You know your customers. You have feedback from them. You got reviews from them. Call up and talk to your customers. What are they saying about you? What are they saying that you can use to convince the retailer that you are invested in your consumer and your brand so much that the retailer wants to be on your side? What are those questions? What are those answers that you have? You have done A/B testing. Most brands would have done A/B testing. So what is working at POS? When a regular brand starts up, they're still experimenting with their point of sale communication. Now, you already know what's working. Just use it.
Yeah.
Your ramp up period does not need to be too long here. Just start using. What do you need to prove to the retailer? Your product is saleable. You already know how it sells. Just demonstrate it for them. The other point is that when you're launching, you just launch and load as much stock as possible on credit. But you would have seen seasonal variations in your business, any business. It doesn't have to be drastic, but you would have seen seasonal variations. So you should know how much to sell in, how much not to sell in. So this is the data you have. Basically, you are leveraging your expertise from the e-com, e-world. Therefore, it's e-leverage.
Okay. No, I think beautifully said, Sharan. There's tremendous amount of business learnings, practical business learning that one should carry forward and not look at offline distribution as a completely new business start.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So that was E. And lastly was systems.
Right.
What kind of systems are we talking about?
This is pretty much how you manage to run your business. We spoke about how your team is going to be spread out large and wide. You're not going to be able to see them every day. But you need to provide them with training and SOPs to know what they are supposed to do. What are the system you're setting in place for them to follow? So when you tell a salesman you have to visit a store, how many stores is he supposed to visit? When he visits a store, what is he supposed to do? What are the steps he's supposed to follow in talking to the retailers? What should he offer? What should he not offer? Which stores will carry what products? So you will have to go through the end. You have to set up this training and a SOP to tell your team how they are supposed to do the job that they've been hired to do. The question here is your team equipped to do the job that they're supposed to do? And have you given them all the tools needed for it?
Sure.
Next is a distributor management system. That is a system you need to put in place. This is probably the biggest investment you'll make at this stage. But if you can track how much your distributor is selling on a daily, even hourly basis, it gives you so much more information like you already had in the digital stage. To know how to plan your products, how to ensure the distributor is making money. how much credit he's giving out into the market. You need to have this at the tip of your fingers.
Sure.
And to sum it all up, you need your dashboards. Like you say, measure what you treasure.
Yeah.
If you don't track something, you're never going to grow that aspect of your business. Or you need to know what metrics you're going to track on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis. And your team should also know what they have to deliver on this timely basis to each of the metrics. So can you look at a dashboard to start your day every day and figure out where your business is? These are the systems you need to have in place.
Nice. I think these are simple enough, but fairly powerful. Okay. Excellent. So I think it didn't feel like such a big game at all, right? So we spoke about games, despite Sharan's obvious dislike for D2C. He's still willing to indulge them and given them this formula of games where we spoke about first go to market, where you said that setting up a go to market is all about choosing the right partner, starting small and then growing, making sure you have the right amount of margin, etc., to make sure they remain in play despite your scale being low, etc. We move to assortment, where you again spoke about being careful about expanding SKUs as well as brands and offerings, and making sure that you are able to juice out a channel before you try to exploit another one.
Right.
Then we spoke about messaging, where you spoke about having a unified message. Online, offline, the consumer experience should largely remain the same, and hence your messaging needs to have much more harmonization. Then we spoke about e-leverage, which is a very interesting point about the fact that you've been operating online for 2 years, 3 years now. There's tremendous amount of learning that you have from consumers, from point of sale, etc., which you should definitely be able to leverage in building your offline distribution and making sure that you don't start from ground zero. And last but not the least is this whole thing around investment into systems, which is all about enabling your teams to see what they are doing, track their own progress, and making sure that you are able to measure what you treasure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Okay. Excellent. No, I think this is very comprehensive, Sharan. I'm sure all the D2C brand owners or startups who are wanting to build a bigger sustainable business would definitely take note and hopefully reflect on the questions that you've raised in GAMES. And if you're a listener and you think you have more questions than you have answers for, so you know where to post those questions, and hopefully we should be able to provide you with some amount of perspective, if not answers. Till then, thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net.